Provost Cavan, members of the Armed Forces, members of Renfrew Community Council, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great honour and a pleasure to represent the Lord Lieutenant today at the rededication of Renfrew's War Memorial. It is said that the secret of a good speech is to have a good beginning and a good end, and with as little as possible in between. So with that in mind, as Reverend Steele mentioned, I am a Renfrew lad, born and bred, of Renfrew parents, born and bred. I can see just above what used to be Coyer's Cafe, where I lived up till the age of 5, just down there. And I well remember the sense of occasion as an 11-year-old bugler as we marched on Remembrance Sunday from the Cenotaph to Renfrew North Church, taking the colours to the service. War memorials provide the nation with a physical reminder of all that those have served and sacrificed. Back then, at that time in the late 60s, I think it'd be fair to say that Remembrance Sunday ceremonies had personal significance for many in attendance. The passage of time has reduced that number significantly, but there's one lady here today with us who was 1 year old, Mrs. Nan Hill, at the time of the unveiling of this monument. We won't ask you for any memories, but just to acknowledge that you were there at the time. In total, there are 286 names in the rolls of honour, 178 of the fallen from World War I, 107 from World War II, and the last to be named was that of Lance Corporal James Murdoch, known as Doc to his comrades. James fell on the last day of the Falklands War. His family are here with us today, and this is a double sadness for them, having just come from the funeral of James's mother, Margaret. So I know this is a poignant occasion for you, and our thoughts on it. At this point, I would like to thank Moira Serrell of the Community Council for organising this and for giving me such a steer, and also Heritage Renfrewshire for providing background information on the Renfrew War Memorial, which, if you wish to Google, the biggest source of information on Renfrew War Memorial appears to come from TripAdvisor, so I don't really know what that means for the Renfrew anyway. So I went to the Heritage Centre in Abbey Mill in Paisley to look through the page in Renfrewshire Gazette from the 5th of August 1922, and it was fascinating. I spent an engrossing hour there as you start to go through things, and there's a section titled Round the County, and I'd just like to read a few snippets from it. One was from a day exactly 100 years ago today, and it was particularly sobering. On Tuesday, a party of limbless men from Erskine, about 90 strong, were treated by the Glasgow meat trade to a char-a-banc trip to Prestwick. The Blue Boys thoroughly enjoyed their outing. Others were a bit more amusing, and under the heading, the annual grievance, ! Farmers from all over the country are again complaining of the depredations made on their turnips by boys. Presumably the same boys who provoked the following in that one displeasing feature of the War Memorial unveiling at Renfrew on Saturday was the noise made by boys who seemed to look on the ceremony as an occasion for display of animal spirits. Now, as you're aware, the War Memorial was moved in a few yards in 2008 to accommodate the new road layout, which some of you may have mastered. I have to say I still struggle with it, whether I'm going to get wiped out. But initially there was a great deal of discussion as to where it should go. Should it be sited at the Robertson Park, High Street, down at the Renfrew Ferry? But happily it was decided on to be St Andrew's Cross, which is most appropriate as you have the intersection of the four roads, the main roads into Renfrew. It was unveiled, as say, on Saturday, August the 5th, 1922, 8 years after the outbreak of World War I. 8 panels of beautiful white granite, 4 of the panels with the names of the fallen made out in leaded lettering. And like Reverend Steele, I'm going to pay tribute by recalling the words of the initial dedication 100 years ago. Colonel Walter Brown, like myself, a Deputy Lieutenant, unveiled the memorial, and he spoke of the great privilege which was his, as is on mine, as his mine, and unveiling that memorial to the men who by their sacrifice had assured the peace and security of those at home. And it's described as a tense and impressive silence as he pulled the cord and the bunting which veiled the erection fell to the ground. He was followed by Mr. Joseph Johnson, Member for Parliament, who in the course of a brief oration said that prior to the outbreak of war, the world was progressive and prosperous. And now, 8 years later, civilization was in ruins, every nation was unsettled and discontented. And surely the lesson to be learned from this was that a real and lasting peace was an absolute necessity. He concluded by saying that so long as this memorial stood, it would mutely testify to the unsurpassed courage and valour of those whose names were inscribed thereon. And with all his heart, he joined with them that day in bearing testimony to the gallantry and sacrifice of the glorious dead. These words retain a sobering resonance and are as fitting now for this dedication as they were 100 years ago. Provost Cameron, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention.